Good morning, Year 10. Mr. Smith here, ready for your first edition of Living Room Lessons. Hopefully these are going to be a good alternative to not being in the classroom with my expertise, but I can be right with you in your living rooms while you do your work, okay? Now, obviously, this is the first edition, so things are, as I always say, likely to go wrong. So far, my setup's not great in that the brightness on the TV is not fantastic, but that's because it's such a beautiful sunny day, and hopefully, as time goes on, I might be able to get some better technology to improve this if they are successful. So we will get started with your first bit. So what you are going to need for your lesson today is your exercise book, a pen and a ruler. If possible, complete this, watch the video on your laptop and have your phone handy because there are going to be some QR codes that you can scan for extra little bits of help. And then attached to your email, there should be a scan called Factors Affecting Climate and a worksheet, which has got the same title. The worksheet's optional, but if you want to print it out and use that, that might make things more helpful. But before we dive in, I just want to, every lesson I'm going to do a little bit of a wellbeing preach at you, which I'm sure you will all love. Now, my first one for today, which I have done myself today, is act like you are in Love Island. Every morning, wake up, have a shower, get your clothes on, put some aftershave, perfume, makeup, whatever you want, so you feel like you've got purpose each day, because it might seem like a lovely idea bumming around in your pajamas, but I guarantee you will feel better for it, for making that effort and getting into a routine. So we will get started now with our first lesson. So, as you know, we are now coming on to theme 2. We've left theme 1 behind. That is our rural and urban geography all done. And what we are coming on to now is physical geography, which is at times more complicated, but at times, if you just learn the key terms and the processes, you will be fine with this. So the first part that we're going to be doing is our weather and climate unit. Before we dive into that, don't think just because you are sat at home that you have escaped my puns. Jog the memory remains alive, okay? Jog your memory, sorry. So what you can do on your phones is, in a minute I will put up a print screen of this slide and there is a QR code there that you can scan. So scan this and it will take you to a Google Docs where you can answer these 3 questions, put your name in, and I can see how many of you are actually listening to me. It's not essential, but you can if you want. So pause your phones when the print screen pops up in a moment and click on the QR code using your phone. Okay, hopefully you've all had a go at the quiz now, and I can keep an eye on you, which is, you know, all I want. So we are going to dive in now to our actual lesson. So your title in your books today is, what are the factors that affect climate? I will repeat that. What are the factors that affect the climate? Please make sure you are writing your titles in. It is so important now that you are keeping organised and that you are keeping all of your notes together in one place. So today is going to be a bit more of a kind of generic introduction to how climate can affect different parts of the world and the different factors that lead to it. We have still got our learning bar, so we are first of all going to be describing weather and climate and the factors that affect it. Then you will have a go at explaining it, and then I want us to have a go at relating it to some real places. So first of all, here are 2 definitions for the words weather and climate, which you have probably heard a lot of times before, but they are very, very different things. So the first thing I would like you to do in a moment is copy out these 2 definitions, and I want you to decide whether that is a definition for weather or a definition for climate. I'm going to pause, ask you to pause again now, write these out, and then decide whether it's weather or climate, and I will tell you the answers in a moment. Okay, Year 10, hopefully you've paused your video and you have written these out and you've had a think about which one might be weather or climate. So before we go through the answers, I am going to give you an example in some different words just to make it really crystal clear for you. If you were one of those classic kids that was too scared to write down the answers in case you wrote the wrong thing down, listen to my example and then pause again and have a go, okay? So if I was referring to the climate of the place, I would be talking about the overall patterns, the overall patterns that happen in that place in terms of temperature, in terms of rainfall, in terms of cloud. I would be talking about the overall patterns, whether that's day and night or whether that's monthly. If I was referring to the weather, I would be referring to what is going on at that exact moment. So what is going on in the atmosphere? So right now, if I was talking about the weather, I would be saying that it's a bright sunny day. There are very few clouds out there. Ooh, very few clouds out there, and it's quite dry. Have a go again, pause it if you were too scared, and now have a go at writing in whether you think each definition is weather or climate. Right, hopefully you've had a go now, so let's check what you put. So our first one, the state of the atmosphere at a particular place and time, whether that's heat, cloud cover, sunshine, wind, rain, that is our definition for weather. Okay, so if we're talking about the weather, we are talking about what is going on at this exact moment. Hope you can still see my head. And the general weather conditions in an area over a long period of time. Sorry, emails are flooding in now. This would be what we would refer to as climate. So if you didn't write those down, have a go now, please. So the next thing I want you all to have a go at, on my board are 6 different statements. They are either statements about a place's weather or their climate. I would like you to, in a minute, when the print screen appears on your screen, pause your video again, write these 6 statements out and decide whether they are a statement about the weather or climate of a place. Good luck. Okay, Year 10, don't worry, I've learnt my lesson. I've muted the keyboard, muted my laptop, sorry, so there's not going to be any more emails popping up. So let's go through your answers on this one. So our first one, today it has been cloudy. That would be referring to the weather, because it's talking about what's going on right now. Summers in the UK can get quite hot. That will be talking about the climate, because it's saying overall, summers are generally hot. Number 3, grab an umbrella, it's raining. That one is again referring to weather because it's saying that right now outside it's raining. Brazil's weather is tropical. Number 4 would be talking about the climate because it's saying overall they have got a tropical climate. Number 5, deserts are very hot during the day and cold at night. That one is talking about the climate because it's talking about the fact that in the day it's generally hot and in the night it's generally cold. So that's their overall pattern. And then lastly, average winter temperatures in the UK are 5 degrees Celsius. This one again is referring to the climate because it's saying overall the average temperature in the UK is 5 degrees Celsius in the winter. Hopefully you got all those. If not, make sure you make a quick note of which one they are. So the next thing we're going to talk about now is how we would measure these different types of weather conditions, because obviously you hear these types of weather spoken about all the time on the news, on the weather forecast, but there are specific ways of measuring them. Now we're going to dumb this down a little bit and go for the quite simple measurements because you don't need to know the full scientific equations for all of these. But what I'd like to do in a moment, I'm going to do a lot of clicking in a minute because I for some reason put lots of animations on this slide. I would like you to copy out this mind map and I would like you to put in the correct units of measurement for each type of weather. Here we go. I'm going to sit down. Hopefully you can still see me. So, precipitation, humidity, cloud cover, sunshine, air pressure, wind direction, wind speed, and temperature. So, here are a list of the different units that you could include. I would like you now to pause your video. This print screen will pop up and I want you to copy this out and have a go at matching up the correct units to the correct type of weather. Okay, hopefully you've all had a go at that. So let's go through the answers. Oh, lots of clicking again, sorry, I'm going to go on my knees again. So, here are our different types of weather. So we will start with temperature, probably the most straightforward. So temperature, we generally measure in degrees Celsius. Degrees Fahrenheit in America and other parts of the world still, but generally in the UK we use degrees Celsius. Precipitation, which means the amount of rainfall or snow or hail, we would measure in millimetres. Humidity, there's a lot of different measurements for humidity, but the most simple, straightforward one is just to measure the percentage humidity. So what percentage of the air is humid? cloud cover, this is one you've probably never heard before. We will come back to this in our next lesson. We measure in octas. So we will come back to that another time. Sunshine, we would generally measure in minutes and hours. So how many minutes and hours of sunshine will there be each day? Air pressure, so again, this one, there is hundreds of different ways you can measure it. The most kind of simple generic one is PSI, which is measuring the pounds of air pressure forcing down at one point in time. Wind direction, nice and simple, north, east, south or west. We obviously might say northeast or north-northeast if we were feeling really, really jazzy with it, but we generally would use the direction in terms of our compass. And wind speed, we will normally measure in miles per hour. Hopefully you've got all these right. If not, pause the screen quickly and write the correct answers in. So what we have got now is a map of the world, and this map shows us the different climates in different parts of the world. Hopefully, I know you can't see this perfectly, but you're just going to have to listen to me on this one. So obviously here are our continents. Here is the equator, and here are our two tropics, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. These are generally 30 degrees north, not generally, they are 30 degrees north or south of the equator. And if we look quite closely at this, so first of all, along the equator, we can see that we have an equatorial climate, which is the technical term we use for like a tropical rainforest climate. So along the equator is where we expect it to be the hottest and the wettest. 30 degrees north or south, we generally are finding our desert climate, which is this yellow colour. This is where we have the hottest and the driest weather. We will come back to this in a few lessons' time as to why this is. Now let's move kind of further away. So where we are, UK up here, but just below kind of 60 degrees north of the equator, we are in an oceanic climate, or a temperate climate we might say, which basically means it's bog standard average, which we all know. We have days of rain, days of sun, no highs or lows, nothing particularly special. So if we look at this map, it might look like a big confusing mess of colour and lines and words that you've never heard before. But there are some very simple factors that determine why along the equator they have the hottest, wettest climate, and why 30 degrees north or south they have a drier climate, and why in the UK we have it bog standard average. We have our hot, we have our cold, no extremes. There are a range of different factors that affect this, and what you're going to do now is you're going to have a look at what these different factors are. So what I would like you to do, in a moment you're going to pause the screen, and there are two things that you might need. Our four main factors that we're going to talk about are latitude, distance from the sea, the prevailing wind, and the altitude. What I would like you to do, once you've paused your screen, is either make a copy of some kind of table like this, or do your notes however you want to lay it out, or there is an attached worksheet you can use, which has kind of hints and tips for you. Don't be lazy though. If you think you want to have a go at doing your own notes, please do. You will also need on your email the scan of the textbook, which will help you to fill in the blanks and have a look at these four different factors. Once you have done this, we will come back and I will talk through them briefly with you, but you need to make sure that you are making detailed notes that you understand. Put them in your own words, make diagrams, do it however you think is going to make it easier for you, but I will talk through them again in a moment. Okay, year 10, I'm back. Hopefully you've made some notes. I hope that you've probably spent at least kind of 10 minutes really reading through it and making sure you understand it. I am now going to talk through all four of the different factors now, using props somehow, but you need to make sure that you understand it. So we will start off with our latitude. So here are my first two props. Bear with me on this one, I've only got two hands. So yes, I did bring my globe stress ball home because Lord knows I'm going to need it. And I've got a candle, all right? So the candle represents the sun. So here's our sun, here's our earth. Now remember, our earth is always on a tilt, okay? It is always at a tilt of 27 degrees-ish, okay? And remember also that our earth is always rotating around the sun. And then the last thing to remember is that our earth is also always spinning. As I said, haven't got enough hands for this, but we'll give it a go. So here's our earth on a tilt. It's rotating around its own axis and it is rotating around the earth. As we can see, well, hopefully, I don't know, as it moves around, doesn't go back and forward. I just can't bring it around my arm. The equator always remains the closest part of the Earth to the sun. So along the equator, they have the same amount of sunlight year round. Whereas we obviously, as we're tilted further away for half of the year, during winter, that's when we're more likely to have our our colder weather, because there's less solar concentration on the Earth, okay? Whereas the equator is constantly facing the Earth. And what this means is that the equator remains hot year round. And that is why, as you move further away from the equator, so as your latitude increases or decreases away from the equator, that is why you are going to get hotter or colder climates. Places nearest the equator, more likely to be hot all year round, which is why their climate is generally warmer, okay? Places further away, so the poles, for example, are the furthest away from the equator. They get the least amount of solar radiation. Their latitude is the greatest away, and because they get the least amount of solar radiation, this is why they are generally colder. Next one then, so distance from the sea. I haven't got any props on this one, I'm afraid. Hello, Year 10. This was a little edit I had to make because I realised I was talking absolute rubbish. So you're going to watch me move and talk at a different rate to what you are hearing. Sorry about that. So distance from the sea has a big impact on a climate because the sea is obviously a huge mass of water, which brings with it certain temperatures and certain types of precipitation. Now, because the particles are so much more spread out in water than they are on land, it means it takes a longer time for it to cool down or warm up in terms of its temperature. So we will generally find that in winter, for example, when I am driving into work from Brighton to Hassocks, we will find that it is generally going to be a little bit warmer in Brighton than when I get to Hassocks. I always see the temperature decrease on my car, and this is because it takes a long time for the water that has warmed up cooled down over winter to then get back up to a temperature. Whereas when it's winter, I generally find that it's a little bit warmer in Brighton when I leave compared to when I get to Hassocks. And this again is because over summer the water has warmed up. It's taken a long time, but it's warmed up. But then during winter it takes a long time to cool down again. So we generally will have slightly warmer temperatures on the coast. If we were to look at two places of a similar latitude, so Moscow and Glasgow. Glasgow is on the coast and Moscow is inland. We will generally find that during the winter, for example, Glasgow is going to have a milder temperature than Glasgow. Glasgow is going to be milder than Moscow, and this is because Glasgow is on the coast. So it's got warmer oceans, keeping the overall air temperature warmer than in Moscow. Whereas because Moscow is so inland, it's not so impacted by the temperature of the ocean. Oceans obviously also bring moisture with them, so if you are nearer to a coastline, you are much more likely for there to be lots of rain and lots of precipitation because there's going to be more moisture being picked up by the wind, carried over onto the coastal areas, meaning that it is going to be a little bit wetter. I've finished talking now, but my body on the screen doesn't seem to be, so let's just have a little sing-song. La 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 la. Look at me dance. Okay, yep, no, we're nearly there. Hand point, hand point. What am I pointing at? Wow, cutthroat. Good. Keep going. Yep, all still going. I was talking loads and loads of rubbish. Let's keep moving on. Okay, nearly there. In a moment, I'm going to bend down to press the keyboard to move on to the next slide. It's coming in 3, 2, 1.5. I can't even count. And here I go. Our next one is our prevailing winds. So generally, the prevailing wind is the most frequent wind direction that affects an area. So in Britain, we generally get wind blowing from the southwest, especially on the south coast. So it comes southwest across the Atlantic Ocean, which means that that prevailing wind direction picks up warmer, moister air. So that is why generally on the south coast of the UK, we have much warmer and wetter conditions than maybe other parts of the country. The southeast, where I'm from, back in Cambridgeshire, they tend to have warmer but drier conditions because there's not a huge ocean that the wind is blowing over to pick up lots and lots of moisture. And then lastly is our altitude. So temperatures decrease the higher up you go. And this is because as you go higher up the land, the air becomes less dense. And as it becomes less dense, that means the particles are more spread out. That means that it's not so easy to heat up that air. So as you move uphill, you're going to get less dense air. It's harder to heat it up. It's going to be cooler than if you were lower down. So locations at higher altitudes have much cooler temperatures. Temperatures usually decrease by about 1 degree Celsius every 100 meters in altitude increase. So the higher up you go, generally the temperature is going to decrease. So those are our 4 factors affecting climate. If you didn't make detailed notes on that, go back to your scan, have a listen to me whittling on again and making mistakes as per normal, and make sure you're writing proper notes on this. Okay, we're approaching the end of our first living room lessons, but before we do, there's 2 more things I'd like us to look at. So you've just written down 4 of the kind of large scale factors affecting climate. These are quite big physical factors, but there are also a few smaller human factors that might impact how a climate of a place is. So if you live in a city, a large urban area, forget Brighton because it's on the coast, it's a bit strange, but think of London. When we have those hot summer days, London is always much, much warmer than where we are. And this is what we call an urban heat island. So I don't know if you can quite see it, but on this graph, we can see generally in temperatures throughout the day, that our rural areas, our suburban areas are much more likely to have cooler temperatures than in the middle of a city. Middle of cities are generally warmer. So what I'd like to do is pause your screen in a moment, and there is another QR code which is going to take you to a vintage YouTube video explaining how an urban heat island has impacted New York. So pause the video and click on, get your phone out, scan the QR code and watch the video. Don't want you to make notes on this necessarily, I just want you to have a look at it because it's quite interesting. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that vintage YouTube video, a real treat for you all. So as you can see on that, the more urban an area is, the warmer it is going to be. And that is because concrete and buildings absorb huge amounts of heat, and that keeps an area warmer for much longer than in a rural area. So the last thing I want you to do today is I want us to bring all of that stuff that you have done today together and have a go at an exam question. So the question is, describe and explain 2 factors that can affect temperature. Okay, so if you want, copy out that question. It's a 4-mark question. So what you need for a 4-mark question are 2 points that have been explained. So choose 2 of our 4 factors, and I want you to concisely, using key terms, explain how those things affect the temperature. This is the key bit, affect the temperature. So I'm not asking you about moisture and precipitation and rainfall, it's how these things affect the temperature of a place. Pause the screen, have a go at this, write it in your book. I might have a look at it when we're back, who knows, we'll see how many of these we do. Okay, hopefully you've had a go at that exam question. Well done, you have survived your first living room lesson of me whittling on at you. Thank you very much if you are still there. You've got lots more of these to come, Year 10. I know you're missing me really. But just to summarise, these are the notes that you should have in your book. Okay, I'm going to do this at the end of every lesson so you can almost do like a checklist of these are the notes that you have got. So, first of all, you should have a definition of weather and climate. You should then have those different examples of weather and climate. Following that, you will have all of your different units of measurement for different types of weather. You will then have your factors affecting climate, whether that's notes in your book or whether that's you've completed the worksheet and tagged it in, of course, up to you how you've done that. And then lastly, you should have your 4-mark answer. If you haven't done all of these things, please make sure you go back through the video and make notes on all of these. I hope this video has been useful today. You've got many, many more to come. Keep safe, keep in touch, keep talking to each other, please. And well done, Year 10, you are brilliant.